Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about that new home sales report that came in so hot and then what to expect for existing home sales. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
Yes, it's been quite an eventful morning. I had two different producers from CNBC wanted me to come on. One was like extremely early and I'm on the road. That wasn't going to happen. And then later on the day, it was after the new home sales report, and new home sales, huge beat of estimates, the highest level of new home sales post 2022. Sarah Wheeler, what has happened in the last 8 weeks?
The last 8 weeks, we have seen mortgage rates get below 6.64%, down towards 6%.
Towards 6%. So it was a very, very live interview. I took shots at Powell, Beth Hammock, and try to explain the supply and demand equilibrium and what the builders have to go through. But we've been here before. Like, rates get down towards 6% and the Fed starts to, I know how, we need to balance the economy. So they start pushing back just a little bit. But unlike last year, the 10-year yield never got to 362, and we haven't had a really strong reversal in yields yet. Mortgage spreads are doing so much better this year. I even told the anchor, you see a mortgage spread, you give it a hug. So she says, yes, hugs all the way around. But in this case, we've done this dance before. Rates get down near 6%. Purchase application data came out today. We have 8 weeks now of rates being below 6 points. It's the best 8 weeks of 2025, not shocking. And as long as you don't get a reversal in yields and just sitting here, I understand it's very hard for mortgage rates to get below 6% with Fed policy and where the spreads are. But just getting to 6 gives you a little bit of life. Now, the builders have way too many completed units of sale, and before they start issuing a lot of permits and stuff like that. But the question is, can rates just stay down here and get sales picking up again? For purchase application data, we still need about 6 more weeks of that before it starts hitting the data line. So we want 12 to 14 weeks of positive data. The last 8 weeks, 7 positive, 1 negative, 8 straight weeks of double-digit year-over-year growth. But I'm just hoping that this time around, we don't have the reversal up to 7 again. And right. It's a much different backdrop, the labor market. We were talking about this morning on X with a lot of Wall Street traders. What's the difference this year than last year? Well, job growth is a lot lower this year. Now you have confirmed weakness in residential construction, or specialty trades construction, manufacturing. All these things are coming down together. So it shouldn't be taking a hawkish stance if rates get down to 6%. So that I think is a very valid conversation anybody could have with any Fed president, any Fed governor, Jerome Powell, anytime, 24/7. And it shouldn't shock people that sales grew, but the new home sales is very volatile. It gets revised all the time. So I guarantee you, whenever you see a big beat, you're going to get some kind of lower revisions. But you can make this kind of work with near 6%. It's the volatility back up to over 7 that's always made it more difficult. And the builders have no leeway anymore. Their completed units of sale are at levels that historically they do not really push the permit level. And we see it in the housing starts data.
I think that's what was surprising to me, is that we know that the permits have been at recession levels, right? I mean, you're talking about COVID-19 levels.
Yeah, for a few years now. And, for 14 years, the builders just didn't have like 120,000 completed units. By the way, when I tell people that in every city I take, that the builders only have 120,000 completed, they're like, what? And I go, yeah. None of y'all must have seen the charts. Of course not, because you're normal people. Only geeky, nerdy people see that. But in this case, they have no leeway anymore. And you see this in the gross profit margins. Lennar starting to get hits out there. So what's held it is that the big builders have been using their profit margins to try to pay down rates. And any kind of reversal shock just gets harder now. In that context. So I say, because I know the Fed staffers are listening, since Sarah Wheeler will not give me a press pass to ask, I'm asking you, invite me. Look, all these cities are asking for the chart daddy to come with a nerd tour. Let me give you a thorough presentation to everyone, every Fed governor, every data scientist, every there, and then I could get you all on board on what's going on and how the housing market has worked since the Peloponnesian War. So you don't have to be old and slow anymore.
Well, we will see if we get that invite. That would be wild. But yeah, okay, so here's the other thing about the builders, right? They are already operating in a sub 6% world. So what does that mean when we're down where we are now? How does that stimulate what they can do?
So 2 points. Number one, not all builders have the ability to pay down rates. And number two, when mortgage rates come down towards 6%, it's cheaper for the builders to do the pay downs than at 7.25, 7.5, especially 8%. So you use your margins the best you can. And what we talked about on CNBC, the builders are not the march of dimes. They are efficient sellers. They sell homes like a commodity. So they're just make it, build it, get it out, because they don't want completed units piling up, because then people want more discounts and all of a sudden, profit margins, and then that really hurts permits. And that's how housing cycles have worked for decades. But I do expect that the Builders Confidence Index, which is tilted to small builders, to start to pick up. The last 2 months, we saw a little bit of pickup on the 6-month outlook. You just got to stay here. I mean, if it was sub 6% mortgage market, we're okay. But I'm always staying to the stance. It's really hard with this Federal Reserve to get that to go there unless the labor market breaks. And here we are almost in October. By the way, the lighting on the CNBC things, boy, that I'm going to do some AI magic with that, because I look like, Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy Krueger were, hanging out with me in Denver. But not all builders are the same, but getting down, the bigger builders can, it makes it easier on their margins. And then the smaller builders have a little bit a better shot. So it's three times now, the Trinity. That is a trend, right? 6.64 down to 6%. It has worked. It's not spectacular. It's not a housing boom. Jerome Powell, if you're listening, if people have sex, have kids, it's going to be okay. Life finds a way, homie, right? And please, somebody tell Beth Hammock stop to say robust housing labor market. Woo! Go to work on that person.
Okay. Also, I just have to take an aside that I wonder how your brain works, because you're talking data, and then you're like, oh yeah, the lighting and Freddy Krueger, and I'm like, what happened?
Sarah Wheeler, you do not want to know what goes on in here. This is like a Bosch painting in the Matrix put together with charts and data, and does not stop 24/7. That's why you got to have the big hair, man. You just got to keep it all in there, right?
It insulates your brain. The hair insulates your brain.
It's a sea of madness, man. It's a sea of madness. I've been that way since I was a kid, man. Just,
I love it. Okay. So I think it's interesting because you and I talked about at the beginning of the year, before, maybe even in 2024, at the end of the year, you were talking about the builders' supply and demand, like they had a supply and demand problem. What do you think now that we're almost in October? What do you think about what you wrote back then about the builders?
So that was one of the legit calls for the year, that the builders have a supply and demand problem because the supply is growing. And there's a difference here. A lot of people look at monthly supply for the builders and they think, first of all, what was the Fight Club rules? We do not mix the new home sales market with the existing, because people see the 10 months of supply and they go, oh my God, there's so much supply out there. And then they never read. You could tell that somebody who never reads a new home sales report ever, because they break down in construction, not construction started yet, and finished products. The completed units were perking up. So what happened late last year is that the builders' confidence was picking up. And then we wrote the article, they have a supply and demand problem. But people said, well, you've always said follow the confidence data. I said, yeah, they're rolling with Trump right now, and rates are going up. So the supply will be the story, and the supply is a completed units of sale. This is why we show those charts, because nobody shows those charts. You know what? To this day and period, nobody shows the multi-decade completed units charts. I don't know why, but this is where the builders go, no mas, no, that's it. And then all of a sudden now residential construction workers are losing their jobs. Wow, it all flows together, because that's how cycles work. You just got to find the patterns and things that historically have been the case. And that's why we wrote that article. That's still here because the completed units are elevated. So they need sales to make sure to wind that down and make sure it doesn't escalate even more. So shocked a lot of people, right?
Right.
Everyone's like new home sales, because we were talking about this on Next. So people are saying 6% rates aren't going to work. The builders' gross margins, bam, highest new home sales since 2022. It's like when Ronnie Lott used to see a wide receiver come down the middle and he'd knock him on his ass. They go, what? 6% did work again. Follow the data. Just let it do its thing.
Let it do its thing. And by the time this comes out, we'll have existing home sales. So we won't Fight Club rules. We're not talking about, but tomorrow is existing home sales.
Now, okay, so the existing home sales market is a little bit different, right? The existing home sales market needs 12 to 14 weeks of positive weekly purchase application data before it starts to really kick into the existing home sales. We have not had that happen this year. We've had positive year-over-year growth, but the weeklies are key. So I don't expect much from the existing home sales market. We're halfway kind of to the point to where you need to be at. But if we can string out 12 to 14 positive weeks, then same thing as the last few years. All of a sudden, existing home sales grows a little bit, and people get shocked about that. See, last year, I think a lot of people were confused because they didn't see any year-over-year growth in purchase application data. So they assumed that nothing's happening, that sales were going down. And we're like, no, the weeklies are positive. You got to give it time. And our tracker data started to pick up a real big divergence on the weekly pending sales data. And then all of a sudden you had a couple 100,000 more sales. That's all it is, right? This isn't like this is not like the COVID-19 recovery where we just have a V-shaped recovery. It just gives you a little bit of growth. And again, it's all about duration. And we have a working model with rates when it happens. And again, every year that goes on, as long as price growth cools down and wages grow, households form, the affordability metrics get a little bit better on that front. And again, if you had sub 6% mortgage rates, it can work. But we have a Federal Reserve that literally freaks out. Oh my God, when rates get at 6%, we're going to do a clip of like all the years when rates get down to 6% and watch all these Fed people come on TV. No, better watch out. You better watch out. People might buy homes. You might live again in this country. Okay, it's just too soft, Sarah. It's just like one of these things where they get petrified, and we talked about that on CMC. Like, I can understand if it was 3, 4, 5% mortgage rates even, but 6, these homies are like, better watch out, and it's just like, the world works with ball players that want to win. The world doesn't work if you're soft and always afraid of living or anything like that. So, at some point, the labor market does break and it gives them cover. But, we had the lowest mortgage rates and interest rate curve in the history of America last decade. It didn't create the inflation that a lot of people thought. CPI and PCE could barely stay at 2%. Global pandemic inflation is very inflationary, and then the disinflation, tariff inflation. Even the Fed isn't, predicting or forecasting big inflation growth there. So you have to pick your choice. Do you want to live, or do you want like COVID-19 policy, suppress, stay back, out there? And I remember saying that about the Fed years ago on CNBC. It said this is almost like a suppression policy standard, right? If we keep housing permits at recession levels, we won't build homes. If we keep home sales low, then people won't buy homes and more stuff. Wage growth. If we could get wage growth below 3% again, then people don't have to worry about paying higher wages and trying to keep labor. And if these things happen, it makes the Fed's life easier. And we're here, September 2025. They held it the entire way for 3 years. They are flawless in reading their mindset.
Okay, so let's talk about, it's been almost a week since Fed Chair Powell lowered the Fed funds rate. Where have mortgage rates gone, and are you surprised at where we are right now?
No, I mean, the unique thing about mortgage rates right before the Fed, it wasn't like the 10-year yield just like fell really bad. It was falling lower and lower, but mortgage spreads got really good right before the Fed meeting. And then that really good pricing gave it away. So there's not much movement if you take the spread difference variable out of there. And the 10-year yield last time I checked was like 4.14. So it isn't anything big on that front compared to what we saw last year. Last year, we went from 363 all the way, to 479 even. So that was a big reversal, but we haven't seen that action. And again, talk about like being really nerdy. Try to explain to people the mortgage spread variable was the one that really drove rates, and people look at you, what? What's a mortgage spread? But in any case, where mortgage rates are, yeah, perfectly normal. And again, if you see a mortgage spread, give it a hug, because we wouldn't be near 6% at all if they did not improve, especially from the highs of 2023. We'd be over 7% again still, and the Fed would be like, oh, we can't have rates go down. My God, people will buy homes. What are we going to do? So hug a spread.
Yeah, it's encouraging because, like you said, I mean, that's what we're seeing in the purchase apps. We just 7
I
weeks
mean,
now.
a really good thing to your point. Purchase apps, we had the first reversal of yields and rates, and it was slightly positive week to week, and the year-over-year growth was still there. Usually, when you get even a very minor reversal, you get apps falling week to week about 3%. Maybe that happens next week. That could be the case on the late turnover of the rates, but so far it's a lot better than what it was earlier in the year. Right. And earlier in the year, we did see year-over-year growth, but the weeklies, it was just choppy. It was just very choppy. There wasn't any consistency on the week-to-week data, but now we have some consistency. So if any of y'all Fed staffers hear me, you know who to call. Call the chart daddy. We'll correct some of your mistakes, but you don't have to be afraid of living if rates get down near 6%. Y'all just got to chill, relax. Go watch a movie. Go get some popcorn. Relax. It's going to be okay. The world is not going to end.
Okay, well, let's end there. That's a good call to action for the Fed, but also appreciate you talking about these things that you're tracking so closely. And this is what you do in the housing market tracker every weekend. I love it because that's the weekly data, and so we're not caught off guard by things because you're tracking these things every single week. And if people read us, they won't be caught off guard either.
Sounds good. And always remember, existing home sales, much different than new home sales. Existing home sales still needs about 6 to 8 weeks of positive forward data to make it grow and make it work.
Fingers crossed. All right, Logan, thanks so much for being on.